From the other end of the phone, I heard a cool voice. "I'm in a small restaurant right now. Do you remember this place? You—" I cut off Emily's voice, saying, "I remember. You have a good memory." "I thought you might be busy today." I interrupted her again. "I'm free. Can I come over now?" A chuckling sound came from the other end of the phone. It's so frustrating not to be able to see her face. The smile of the girl I used to love is there on the other side of the phone. I'll be waiting. The moment I hung up, I started running. My name is Steve. I'm turning 37 this year. I have recently been assigned to a new department and am being introduced to everyone at the morning meeting. It's somewhat embarrassing to hear the department head explain things about me, but I can't just stand around. I need to perform beyond what was introduced and contribute to the department. With that determination, I look at everyone's faces to regain my focus. As the morning meeting ends and everyone is about to return to their desks, that's when it happened. "Sorry I'm late," said a young man as he slid into the department. The department head was scolding him for being late. "It's not late, just made it." "I'll take the scolding later. I'm really busy right now," he said, opening his laptop. "Man, I was drinking with Mr. Johnson, president of our client company, yesterday and it went on late. He invited me to his house. He said if I caught the 7:30 train, I'd make it. And I did just that, but it was a close call. Tough night," he rattled on, unasked. The department started buzzing. "Yes, it just happened," he responded lightly to a colleague's question. If he had stayed over at the house of the president of our client. Overnight stay at the house of the president of our client. It seems he's good at getting into people's good graces. Even I, meeting him for the first time, found myself disarmed. The department head was visibly troubled, but ignoring his twitching eyebrows, the man gestured for him to wait. "No, I'm really busy right now. There's a meeting with Company S, and I've got a lot of stuff today." Hearing about Company S made me perk up. A lot of stuff. I couldn't help but ask. The man said while looking at his laptop, "Yeah, the supervisor from the client said the materials we brought last time weren't enough. So I said I'd bring all the materials. Steve's been pushing me to wrap things up with Company S by today." The young guy glanced at the department head while speaking. He just nodded silently with a stern face. The young guy sighed. "I've explained everything thoroughly already. I wonder what's missing." To his muttering, I asked, "Can I accompany you on this negotiation?" At my words, the man looked up suddenly, despite his furrowed brows. I pressed on. "You said there's a lot of stuff, right? I'll help you carry it." My offer seemed like a godsend as his face lit up. "Really? That would be a big help," he said, then looked back down at his laptop. "I'll call you when we're leaving. Thanks a lot." Without looking at me again, he immersed himself back into his computer. The department head gave me a questioning look, as if to say, "Are you sure about this?" I nodded with a smile. 30 minutes later, "Let's go," called by the young guy, I rushed over to him. "Oh, by the way, I'm Mark. Have we met before?" "Actually, I'm the top salesman." Finally, I learned his name. I introduced myself with a smile. "I'm Steve. Nice to meet you." Mark nodded and handed me a bag full of files, which I took. "All right, let's go." With a brisk step, Mark hurried across the floor. I managed to keep up with him. Arriving at Company S, Mark checked us in, and we were directed to a meeting room. Seeing me looking around curiously, Mark laughed. "Don't look around so much. Are you okay?" Well, it's a big company. Even the meeting room is unnecessarily luxurious. It was unclear if Mark was trying to squeeze my nerves or just making small talk, but he spoke with a friendly smile. However, it's strange. Doesn't he wonder about me, someone he just met today? Though we had briefly introduced ourselves once, it felt awkward to say anything more. As I was thinking about this, The door to the meeting room opened and a man entered. This man, Carl, seemed familiar with Mark, and they started chatting amiably right away. "Mark, I'm counting on you today. I want to recommend you to my boss with confidence, so please make sure I have enough information," Carl said, extending his hand for a shake. Mark gestured towards the bag I was holding and reassured, "No worries. Look, I brought a ton of materials." That was when Carl finally noticed me. "Who's this?" As I was about to introduce myself, Mark cut in. He's just helping me carry stuff today. We have so many files." "Oh, really?" Carl said. I nodded and greeted him, though I missed the chance to introduce myself properly. I continued to observe the negotiations. Faced with a mountain of files, Carl looked troubled. "Mark, don't you have a summary of this?" Mark frowned. "But last time, you said to bring all the materials." Carl groaned. "But still, no one's going to look through all these files if we present this. I'll get chewed out. You know, my boss is called the Queen of Ice." Reacting to Carl's words, I asked, "The Queen of Ice?" As I repeated the term, Carl made a face as if he'd slipped up. "Please don't mention it. She's very capable, but strict with herself and others. They call her that behind her back, but her judgments are sound, and I've learned a lot under her. So I do respect her," he explained, choosing his words carefully. Internally, I smiled wryly. "Anyway, we can't present this," Carl concluded decisively, dismissing Mark's suggestion. "Oh, come on. We've been pressured to wrap this up by today. Can't we meet your boss directly?" "I'll explain," Mark asked. Carl shook his head vehemently. "That's impossible. She's busy with meetings at another branch today." As Carl paid Mark clung to hope. "Please, just 5 minutes." I chuckled to myself. There's no way you can explain all this in just 5 minutes. Mark bristled at my comment. "Don't speak up when you don't know anything. I've explained this product many times before." It seemed I had inadvertently wounded the pride of the top sales performer. Regardless, I handed my business card to Carl. "Could you please pass this card to your boss?" Carl frowned. But I took a deep breath. "Isn't your boss Emily?" At my words, Carl's eyes widened. "How do you know that? Did I mention it?" I shook my head. "I have known her for a long time. If my business card does not work, then I'll give up and leave for the day." At my words, Mark shot me a reproachful look. I ignored it and continued to stare at Carl. Hesitantly, Carl stood up. "I'll just pass the card. If it doesn't work, you leave today, right?" After his words, I nodded firmly. Reluctantly, Carl took my business card and left the meeting room. After the door closed, Mark began to rant in a panic. "What are you promising on your own? We are told to be done by today. If we can't meet, then just leave like that." I sat at Mark's complaints. Either way, they will not meet us if we don't do anything. I didn't look at Mark as I replied. I could see from the corner of my eye that Mark was flabbergasted. "I'm going to say it was your fault today." I just chuckled at his petulant tone. Then, 10 minutes later, the door opened and a familiar face appeared. "Steve, when did you get back to the U.S.?" a flushed Emily asked, and I smiled. "Today is my first day back at headquarters." Emily was greatly surprised. "Really? You came to us on your first day. If you had told me, I would have handled it myself." Carl entered the meeting room delightfully. He seemed bewildered, probably having never seen his boss up close like this. Mark's reaction was predictable. Even without looking, he must have his mouth wide open. "Sorry to trouble you. May I proceed with explaining the product?" Emily nodded slightly but then thoughtfully added, "Since you're here, it might be a bit of a hassle, but could you explain it to 2 more people?" I nodded, not fully understanding. Then Emily instructed Carl, who left the meeting room. Again, shortly after, Carl returned with 2 men. These are Mr. Chan and Mr. Hang from our Chinese branch. Since you're here, could you give the presentation in Chinese? She smiled slightly, gauging my reaction. I feel like I'm being tested, and it excites me. Just what I wanted. Of course, Emily. Will you? Emily crossed her arms, her expression turning serious. If these two are convinced, I will be too. If there are parts they aren't satisfied with, we'll need more materials. Later, with the reunion scene over, she switched to business mode, the Queen of Ice persona perfectly intact, devoid of any smile. While feeling a nostalgic fondness internally, I switched into work mode. I set aside the vast files I had brought and began explaining in detail, using the materials Mark had previously used in negotiations, addressing the two Chinese gentlemen. I answered their questions accurately. I could sense that Mark was genuinely surprised. It felt good, a little, but no, it's not right to mock the young man, however, being skilled at winning people over and having never really faced setbacks due to his top sales performance and excessive confidence. Perhaps it wouldn't hurt to bend his pride just a little. In fact, this product was one I handled while in China. Therefore, I knew more about this product than Mark did. Having seen the manufacturing process and known the development history, I could provide a more detailed explanation than an average salesperson might. The two Chinese gentlemen were very pleased with my explanation, talking to Emily with satisfaction. Emily discarded her iron mask and smiled. Very impressive. May I ask a question too? Prompted by her, I tightened my loosened focus. She had grilled me over and over again in the past. If I stumbled even slightly, it was back to the drawing board. Reminded of my younger days, I renewed my determination. Her questions were sharp, but I managed to answer all of them smoothly. The contract was settled on the spot, and the negotiation was a great success. I'll be in touch, she said as she left, handing me a business card. On the back, an 11-digit number was hastily scribbled. As we exited, Mark started firing questions like a machine gun. Wait, what's going on? Who are you really? You're not just the new guy who volunteered to carry stuff, right? I chuckled. I'm a guy who spent 8 years honing skills at our China branch and returned today as the head of sales section 1, proficient in Chinese. At my words, Mark's eyes bulged in surprise, and he apologized deeply. I'm so sorry. I burst out laughing. You should listen when people talk, you know. Our department head tried to introduce me several times, but you never paid attention, did you? Mark shrank a bit. I'm sorry. I was busy and flustered. I looked at him seriously. You've gotten by with that attitude so far, but what if I had been a very difficult man? You'd be fired, you know. Mark paled a little. But you're really lucky I'm not at all difficult. Too bad for you, but it was a close call today, huh? It was good luck that I came along today. Mark glanced at me tentatively. So, Steve, how did you get on Emily's good side? He was surely looking to turn my story into a learning opportunity for his job. Smiling inwardly, I began to share an old story with him as we headed back to the office. 15 years ago, after graduating from university, I started working in sales at this company. I underwent training, shadowed a senior, and when it was time for me to handle things on my own, I was assigned to Company S. At that time, Emily was also newly tasked with handling negotiations with our clients. Being new and extremely vigilant, she would stop my explanations at every turn to ask for details. And if I hesitated in my explanations even slightly, she would order me to take the issue back and revise. She was a tough person. She held herself to the same standards, always impeccably dressed in a crisp shirt and well-tailored suit. Back then, I was an audacious young man trying everything I could to win over this difficult client. But she only smiled when I explained things well. It was almost like she was a teacher, and I found it somewhat frustrating. And then, as things went on, I found myself falling for her. Her occasional smile breaking through her iron mask, That smile was incredibly beautiful. I was driven by the desire to see that smile and worked hard to suggest things she would like. Gradually, my performance improved, and then, 8 years ago, I received a transfer order. The location was China. I informed her about the change in my responsibilities, but her expression remained stoic. However, unusually for her, she who had never accepted an invitation for a drink, even for business entertaining, asked me out for a drink as a farewell party. Just the two of us. It was in a small restaurant, and we spent just an hour, no flirty conversations, just good food. Not much talk, but the food was delicious. I was impressed she knew such a good place, though it seemed irrelevant. Her last words to me were, "I hope we meet again." Those words strangely lingered in my heart. As I finished my story, omitting my romantic feelings, Mark's eyes widened in amazement. Wow, I'm not good with that kind of strictness. Redoing work if it's not perfect, that's too much for me, Mark said in a disheartened voice. You need that kind of resolve to get attention from some people. Mark grinned dramatically, and I'll leave such people to you, Steve, and I nudged him lightly. I wondered how to toughen up this guy who seemed unlikely to be defeated by a mere dent to his pride. After a tumultuous first day, as I left work, I found myself pondering over something the business card from Emily turned over. 11 digits, definitely a cell phone number, probably Emily's private number. Should I call it? Not calling might be impolite after she gave it to me. Various thoughts crossed my mind, but I decided to be honest with my desires. I wanted to see her. That reason was enough. I dialed a number with a pounding heart, and it connected even before it rang once. Just that made me incredibly happy. Hello. Her voice came through. Tentatively, right? She wouldn't know my number. Ah, it's Steve. As I spoke, Emily's tone relaxed a bit. Ah, I thought so. Thank you for calling. A brief silence followed. I'm at a small restaurant right now. Remember this place before you went to China? Before Emily could finish, I interrupted. I remember. Good memory. I thought you might be busy today. I cut her off again. I'm free. Can I come over now? A chuckle came through the phone. It's frustrating not being able to see her expression. The smile of the woman I liked is on the other side of the phone. I'll be waiting. The moment I hung up, I started running. When I arrived at the small restaurant, panting, Emily chuckled. There was no need to rush. I wasn't going anywhere. Seeing her smile that I had missed earlier, I mentally celebrated. I sat down opposite her, my heart pounding. To celebrate your return to headquarters, let me treat you. What would you like to drink? Her left hand extending the menu was beautiful. There was no ring on her left ring finger. Her last name hasn't changed. Maybe she doesn't wear rings, or maybe she keeps her maiden name for work, or perhaps she's married but has a different last name. As I considered all the possibilities, I couldn't bring myself to ask the one question. Are you married? Married, then, she asked me. Are you married? I was taken back for a moment when the words came from Emily. Instead, it took me a moment to realize that the question I had been hesitant to ask had been posed by her. She waited for my answer for a bit, then sighed. So, you are married. Is it your policy not to wear a ring? I panicked, not expecting her to conclude her own question. I'm not married, not at all. I was also wondering whether I should ask you that, and was surprised. As I fumbled for words, her expression turned sad. Who would marry a woman called the Ice Queen behind her back? Her self-deprecating words made my heart skip a beat. I would like to, if I could. Upon hearing this, she looked surprised and then laughed. You've always been such a charmer. It was the biggest smile I had seen from her yet. Frustrated that she might think I was joking, I faced her earnestly. I'm not lying. At my words, she suddenly teared up. Ah, I'm sorry. Did I say something to make you cry? Startled by her tears, She was also taken aback. Ah, tears. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. She wiped her tears with her index finger and looked down. I'm sorry, it's just, lately at home, from my mother recently, her sister had her third child, and their mother had told her, you'll have to manage your old age on your own. It felt as if she was being told she couldn't hope for children or marriage of her own and should live her life alone. Those words had stuck with her. I was just a bit troubled, and then you said something unexpected. It shook me. Saying this, she smiled and sipped her whiskey, looking beautiful. Why would you say something so unexpected? I've always liked you, Emily. I decided to be forthright, ignoring her puzzled look. At first, working with you, I was always messing up, and you patiently suggested improvements. When things came together, you smiled at me. That smile was beautiful. I poured out all my feelings. Even today, in the meeting room, seeing you who usually doesn't smile like that, smiling so much because of our reunion. And earlier, when I ran all the way here, and you smiled, I want to see more of your smiles. I want to see the expressions you show only to me. Even while I was in China, I couldn't forget you. She was flustered. Wait, that's embarrassing. Are you joking? She questioned if all I had said was a lie, disbelieving. I exclaimed quietly, it's not a lie, Emily. At this, her face turned bright red. If you've given up on marriage, please marry me, even if it's just as partners for our later years. Please stay by my side. I'll spend the rest of my life making you fall for me. Her lips trembled. But I'm already 39 years old and children, Steve. You should marry a younger woman, not someone like me. It was painful to hear her say that. I gently wiped the tears welling up in her eyes with my index finger. Startled by my touch, she flinched. I want to be with you, not with some younger woman, but with you, I said quietly, looking into her eyes. When I was about to go to China, you said it would be nice to meet again. When we met again, I was determined to confess to you, of course, only if you weren't married. Her eyes widened. Wait, you mean since that time? I nodded. I've been telling you. I've always liked you, even before then. She pouted. Then why didn't you say anything before you went to China? I was stunned. Oh, because it seemed like there was no chance. I thought you wouldn't see me as a romantic prospect. When I said this, she puffed her cheeks. It's not true. Back then, I liked you. I almost shouted out loud but stopped myself. It's not good to yell in a small restaurant. What? As I was speechless, she looked down. Why would a woman go to dinner alone with a guy who she does not like normally? Hearing this, I held my head. Right, she was that kind of woman. Even if it was just a farewell party, her invitation indicated that there was a chance. Ah, I love you so much. The words naturally came out, and she blushed deeply. I'm sorry for being so dense. I'm sorry for wasting your time. Is it still okay if we start now? She nodded slightly. Truly, she had no confidence in being loved. If that's the case, I'll make her feel loved as much as possible from now on, that she is deeply loved for a lifetime. 2 years have passed since then. Ah, Robert is crying. Emily's shout made me hurry over. Wait, if Robert is crying, look, Hannah started crying too. We are married and currently on parental leave, raising our twins. After getting married and considering our ages, we quickly sought fertility treatments and were blessed with twins, a boy and a girl. At 41, having twins was a concern, but the Queen of Ice bravely went through her pregnancy, worked hard until her maternity leave, and successfully gave birth to twins. She was divine after giving birth. Thank you for everything. I love you. When I expressed my gratitude, Emily let tears fall. I wonder if I deserve to be this happy. I'll never forget the moment she said that with tearful eyes. Today, Mark is coming over to celebrate the birth. I want kids soon too, says Mark, who doesn't even have a partner yet. I wonder how they'll react to the realities of parenting. How much will it deflate his pride? I'm looking forward to it. As we soothe our little twins, I wonder if it's bad for their education to harbor such feelings. I hope these kids grow up straight and true, bathed in our love. Emily and I smiled at each other as we soothed our children together.
All right, everyone's presentations are done. Nick, the manager, said as he tried to move the discussion forward. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me and began to speak. There's apparently someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. His lackey, Mike, of course, agreed with Nick. I'm leaving. After leaving the meeting room, I started to shut down my computer. I noticed that an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking, there's no point in speaking up, no one will listen, I went home quietly. The next day, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. He was staring at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick? Is something wrong? Mike looked at the screen with him. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Knowing the reason for Mike's distress, I thought to myself, serves them right. My name is Adam. My mother passed away when I was in the 9th grade, and I was raised by my father. Well, you could hardly call it being raised. After my mother passed, my father changed. He drowned his sorrows in alcohol, and though he still went to work, he squandered our living expenses on horse racing. Because of that, I had to start working part-time as soon as I entered high school. Every month, I went to the convenience store with bills in hand that couldn't be auto-deducted from my father's account. Even though I endured it because I didn't want to be alone, I reached my limit in my second year of high school and dropped out. I found a live-in job at a distant inn. Thank you for everything. The day I left home, my father, still staring at the TV, spoke. Take care. That was our last conversation. Back then, 18 wasn't the age of majority, so I needed my father's permission to work, and I couldn't hide my place of employment. Yet, my father never visited me even once. I kept working just to survive, and before I knew it, I was 42. Years of hard work paid off, and I was transferred to the headquarters. I was thrilled to be recognized by the company, as I thought I'd be working in the field until retirement due to my lack of formal education. Listen up. Our work can change the future of our employees. Don't drag us down. On my first day after the transfer, Nick, dressed in an expensive suit, spoke sternly. There was a reason for this. Our inn was located in a prominent tourist destination, known so well that everyone in the state could sing its commercial jingle. At its peak, we had 5 locations within the state. But that was long ago. Due to financial difficulties and aging facilities, only the place where I had worked for many years and the original establishment remained. I was prepared to lose my job anytime, but now there was a glimmer of hope. With the rise of social media, the tourist area where the inn was located started gaining attention again. Depending on how hard the sales department, where I was transferred, worked, we could either thrive or be forced to give up this prime location to the new hotel chains continuously popping up. For Nick, who had switched careers from another industry to strengthen our sales, this was a battle he couldn't afford to lose. I understood why he had to be strict. I will do my best. Nick sneered at my enthusiastic declaration. Did you not hear what I said? I'm sorry. I thought I was listening carefully. Out of habit from years of customer service, I apologized reflexively, though I had no idea what had offended him. Someone was watching me with a smirk. In this department, there are those who are expected to excel and those who have been shoved here because they have nowhere else to go. You are the latter. It was Mike, the section chief. He's 7 years younger, at 35. But he was called to headquarters much earlier than I was and had been moving around within the headquarters ever since. I'm not jealous, but I can't accept that he's my boss. Graduating from a prestigious university, he has an unusually high pride and caused many problems as a newbie, making things very difficult for me when I was the front desk leader. When I found out Mike was transferred to the sales department a month before me, I was disheartened. Mike is right. With just a middle school diploma, there's not much you can do. Don't even think about achieving results. As if I didn't exist, Nick remarked, "I'm thirsty." Mike eagerly ran to the coffee maker. It seems Mike is Nick's lackey. I regretted being happy about my transfer to headquarters, wishing I had stayed on site forever. Send a direct mail to every company on this list by the end of the day. Nick only assigned me tasks that even a new graduate could handle. What? There are over 1,000 companies. You want me to send to all of them by today? Yes, if you and your fellow misfits split the work, even those with nowhere else to go should finish by today. I glanced at the employees typing away expressionlessly. They were worn out from customer service, only thinking about leaving on time, or were women reassigned after having children. With zero motivation for work. Even Sam, a new graduate from the same university as Mike, who was supposed to be among the expected achievers, had no enthusiasm for the job. Having joined the company wanting to do customer service. I don't care what they say, I plan to quit anytime, he said. Only Nick and Mike were highly motivated, making all the decisions between the two of them. I originally only wanted to work at the inn to survive and had no particular attachment to this job. I swallowed my words, thinking I had no right to reprimand them. About a month after the transfer, Nick told us with a frustrated look. To commemorate the 50th anniversary, we've decided to create a plan exclusive for one group per day. Originally, Mike and I were supposed to come up with it, but our president, Mr. Thompson, insists on hearing everyone's opinions. So, you all get a chance. As Nick explained, Mike began handing out prints. Make sure not to embarrass Nick. If your ideas are half-baked, you'll have to redo them. It seemed that they had printed his handwritten notes by Mr. Thompson, which included several questions and a section for free responses. It made sense why Nick had to seek our input, given that all responses had to be submitted to Mr. Thompson. We were given a week to think about it, and a meeting was scheduled to compile our ideas. My plan is to let guests enjoy both the old and modern America. Nick began the presentations. Guests would watch a master confectioner at a nearby traditional sweet shop make sweets in front of them. The welcome drink would be premium tea in a bottle. Nick's plan was certainly attractive. After his presentation, Nick called on us to present in the order we were seated. Just as I stood up for my turn. All right, everyone's presentations are done. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me. There's someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. He was likely talking about me. I joined the company as a part-timer and was made a full-time employee when I turned 20. That was 20 years ago, so Nick and Mike probably had no chance to know until recently. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. After that, Nick kept creating opportunities to solicit everyone's opinions, purposefully excluding me from speaking. The meeting unexpectedly heated up and went past the scheduled end time. A few people asked to leave, and the discussion continued with the remaining few. Still here? Normally, you'd leave in that situation. Though I had no attachment to the job initially, hearing kind words from customers made me want to make them happier. For someone like me, with nowhere to go, the inn was my home and customer service was my life. I felt pathetic about my current self. I'm leaving. I left the conference room and started shutting down my computer. I noticed an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking no one would listen to what I had to say anyway, I quietly went home. The next day, while preparing the DM as instructed, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. In his haste to stand up, he hit his knee on the desk. He stared at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick! What's wrong? Mike, thinking he should be the first to rush over, approached Nick while still wearing his coat. He peered at the screen with Nick. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Who is responsible for this company? Nick, more irritated than ever, asked, and Mike answered without checking. Probably Sam. Sam wasn't there because he was attending a morning training session for new hires. Nick gave up on getting angry and returned his gaze to the screen. They were looking at an email that arrived right after the end of the working day yesterday. Apparently, no one, including me, had checked it before leaving. The email was from a large company that used us for their annual employee trips. The president and executives of that company also frequently used our services personally. president of the company, Mr. Mason himself had declared that neither he nor his company would ever use our services again. Well, some companies cancel their employee trips or stop using our services due to financial struggles. Let's just move on. Mike kept wiping the sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. Knowing why Mike was so agitated, I quietly watched their interaction. Do you know how much revenue we get from that company? We can find other guests to fill the rooms, but we'll lose the banquet costs, gift shop revenue, rental car fees, and more. Moreover, the gifts were supposed to be prepared by the traditional confectionery shop involved in Nick's proposed plan. If it's known that we incurred such a huge loss at this critical time, Nick's position in the company would be jeopardized. Nick took a deep breath, seemingly trying to calm himself. All right, Mike. Go to New York right now and apologize to Mr. Mason. What? You're coming with me, right? I have urgent work to do. I trust you, which is why I'm entrusting this to you. Please. Mike, believing Nick's sincerity, agreed with a determined look on his face, saying, yes. That's Nick for you. Even if Mike went to apologize, Nick would shift all the blame onto him if the client didn't change their mind. Well, it was Mike's fault to begin with, so it served him right. About 3 hours later, Sam answered a call from somewhere and repeatedly apologized, saying, I'm very sorry. Everyone watched to see what was happening. After ending the call, he informed Nick with a weary tone. When Mike arrived at the client's company, he only made things worse, further infuriating Mr. Mason. He was demanding, get his boss here immediately. It was no wonder Sam was exhausted, dealing with such a call right after returning from training. What is that idiot doing? All right, Adam, you're coming with me. If sacrificing Mike didn't work, then I must be next. Normally, I'd want to refuse at all costs, but I saw an opportunity in this situation. If I can be of assistance, I'd be happy to join you. I obediently followed Nick, and we flew to New York. When we introduced ourselves at the reception, it became clear how serious the situation was, as the receptionist personally escorted us to the president's office. Angry voices leaked through the door, making both Nick and me uneasy. Excuse me. I'm Nick, the supervisor. I understand my subordinate has caused you trouble, and I deeply apologize. Nick, with his experience in the corporate world, knew enough to offer an apology before excuses. However, his customer service skills left much to be desired. I sighed as I saw Mike trembling like a small dog in the corner of the room. What kind of training are you giving your subordinates? Mr. Mason glared at Nick with a red face. The intensity of his gaze made even Nick take a step back. Regrettably, I joined this company only 2 years ago and was unaware of Mike's issues. I should have identified his shortcomings sooner. Indeed. I should have realized sooner. No sensible person would come to apologize and then give a lengthy presentation on the drawbacks of not using their inn. Nick froze, his mouth slightly open. Suspecting the worst, I picked up the documents that had fallen to the floor. It seemed Mike hastily prepared these documents on the plane, listing the disadvantages. Disadvantage 1: if you change the venue for the company trip, employees might suspect it's for cost-cutting reasons, leading to a negative impression. Reading it aloud half-jokingly, Nick snatched the papers from my hand and checked the contents with a furious expression. Among the stack of documents was a receipt from a nearby convenience store's copy machine. I felt a pang of dread, hoping he hadn't shown the receipt as well. What do you think he said when I asked what kind of nerve he had to do this? I'm very sorry. Faced with the dire situation, Nick must have thought there was nothing left to do but apologize. In a voice smaller than I'd ever heard from him, he uttered words of apology. He said, I'm a Harvard graduate. I don't believe I said anything wrong. Mike! What have you done? Forgetting his plan to pin the blame on Mike, Nick yelled loudly, even in front of Mr. Mason. I didn't do anything wrong. You're still saying that? Look at him. Mike pointed at me with a shaking hand. I was assigned to headquarters in my 20s and now I'm a section chief. This guy only made it to headquarters at 42. Everything I've done proves I was right. So why are we losing the contract? Having said his piece, Mike collapsed to the floor. Of course. You were sent there because you had nowhere else to go. Mike never expected to hear such words from someone he looked down upon. He lunged at me, and Nick hurriedly stepped in to stop him. Mr. Thompson told me Mike is a quick thinker, and to take good care of him. There's no way he was pushed aside. Don't make things worse here. He didn't say quick thinker, he said only quick-witted, didn't he? I don't remember that part. I recalled the many troubles Mike caused when he was a newbie. When Mike was on the front line, his pride was so high that he never apologized to customers. Customer service, especially in our job, doesn't work alone. It brings both good and bad situations. If the front staff or housekeepers made mistakes, or the cleaning company didn't properly clean a room, one had to apologize to the customers regardless of personal fault. Mike, in such situations, would never apologize, insisting he wasn't at fault. This often angered customers, and as the front desk leader, I frequently had to apologize on his behalf. He caused complaints and disrupted operations, which is why he was quickly moved to headquarters. In departments where he didn't interact directly with customers, his quick thinking was beneficial and things went well. But it seemed his flaws were starting to show. Corporate reservations are supposed to be entered into the system by the sales representative. But a quick check yesterday revealed that more than 10 items were missing from the client's reservation. The handover document clearly stated what needed to be prepared. Why didn't you enter it into the system? Why do we have to give them special treatment? Filling rooms near the banquet hall, setting up all the food in advance. Specifying the brand of wine, they're too demanding. No wonder he always angered customers, I thought, feeling a headache coming on. Grouping them in rooms near the banquet hall is for our benefit too. It makes it easier for the staff to set up beds and serve breakfast since everyone's schedule is synchronized. As for the other requests, Mr. Mason suggested them to lighten our load. I didn't know that. Nick finally seemed to realize that Mike was the one who had angered the client. What did you say to them? I just told them we wouldn't give them special treatment anymore. We shouldn't waste effort on things that don't bring in money. I was utterly exasperated at his lack of understanding of customer service. Of course, we shouldn't comply with unreasonable demands. But carrying over successful practices from past stays makes customers feel remembered and enhances their experience. Good memories encourage repeat visits. That's part of our job. I looked down at Mike, who was sitting on the floor. In our job, nothing is a waste. Mr. Thompson likely moved you to the sales department, hoping you'd finally understand this. How do you think he feels now that you've failed to meet his expectations? Mike, tears in his eyes, fled the president's office. I was amazed he still hadn't apologized. You have it tough, Adam. It's okay, we're all employees of the same company. I deeply apologize for this disrespectful incident. Especially after all the care you've shown us. If it weren't for you, Adam, I really would have stopped staying here. When I heard you were moving to the sales department, I was willing to reconsider if you handled it. Seeing us talk so amicably, Nick's face contorted. Do you two know each other? Adam's service is excellent. I always requested him specifically. Normally, we don't accept specific staff requests, but we made an exception for Mr. Mason, adjusting my shifts accordingly. He had personally stayed at our hotel just before my transfer, and during casual conversation, I mentioned, I'm moving to the sales department soon. If I hadn't told him then, things could have been much worse. Please continue to take care of us. I look forward to it. On the return flight, Nick awkwardly offered me a can of beer. It's still working hours. Of course, I had no intention of forgiving him for a single beer. Nick might try to pin everything on Mike and avoid any consequences. While pondering this, a startling fact came to light. Nick, the tea bottles for the plan have arrived. I handed Nick a bottle labeled with our inn's name. They look good. What are you talking about? These are plastic bottles. I had assumed we would use the trendy, high-end bottling tea. But what arrived were ordinary plastic bottles of tea with customized labels. The only unique aspect was the label, which had the inn's name, making it look customized. Upon further investigation, I discovered that a substantial amount of money was set to be paid to the tea company. It was priced like bottling tea. Does this plastic bottle really cost $100 each? The tea inside is specially blended for us. The extra cost is for that. Wouldn't it be better to use another tea company? Or is there a specific reason we must use this one? As Nick continued to make excuses, I showed him a printed email. I informed the tea company's president, Mr. Mitchell, that we discovered irregular payments and he confessed. He said you two were high school classmates and planned to split the extra money. That idiot. Why did he confess? That's not important. You should worry about yourself, this could turn into a police matter. Opening the bottle cap, I suggested. How about calming down with this tea? It supposedly has a relaxing effect. Nick drank the tea frantically. In the following days, decisions were made about their fates. Mike was reassigned to the General Affairs Department, with no chance of transfer or promotion, as per Mr. Thompson's orders. As for Nick, since the payment to the tea company hadn't yet been made, he narrowly avoided legal trouble. Instead, he was encouraged to leave the company, and to avoid further complications, Nick submitted his resignation. Rumor has it that connections between HR departments have made it difficult for him to find new employment. Even though it was good to have those two gone, something unexpected happened in the sales department. Everyone became motivated and united in refining the 50th anniversary plan. In the end, my plan was adopted. We collaborated with the Tourist Information Center to provide personalized guides. The plan, tailored to the number of guests, was truly special for the 50th anniversary. Hey, is Adam's family coming to stay? I immediately booked that special plan for my family. Sam noticed it on the reservation list and quickly picked up on it. Yes, I'm inviting my father. That's great. I might invite my parents too. I lacked the courage to face my father just as Adam. But here, with the confidence Mr. Mason praised, I felt ready. The 50th anniversary plan was a perfect opportunity to reconnect with my father. I hoped to bring back the days when we could laugh together as we once did.